Blog Talk Radio.
This week on The Pilgrim Show, we'll explore the politics of the week with the ever-changing landscape of the United States as Trump pushes to get the country back open again. I'll also give you an update on whatever has happened in information security and anything big in technology. On the continuum, auto body is the subject of the week, and who knows what else might happen. Join me on the journey into freedom and philosophy Saturday at 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific, right here on Freedomizer Radio.
Welcome to A Billion Realities. Here's your host, Jessica Gerlach. Welcome back to A Billion Realities. Thanks for tuning in. Today on the show we have a special guest, Amad Elia. He's going to be talking about his spiritual journey and the spirit molecule ayahuasca. Hi, Amad, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Happy to be here.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm happy to have you on. Thanks for joining us today. I'm so excited to hear your story and all about your spiritual journey, because I see that you've been on one for quite a while. And just so our listeners know, you didn't just have one experience with ayahuasca, you've had like over 20. So I don't know another person who's had more experiences with it, not personally anyway. So I'm super excited to talk about the evolution of those experiences, first of all. But I also just want to mention how incredible it is that, you have your master's in Oriental Medicine and Acupuncture. So tell us a little bit about that first.
So that came about not spontaneously. I actually did a 180 from my world in finance and investing. It was a personal journey in itself. I used to suffer from anxiety and a lot of pain issues here and there, and I think it was the summer of 2007 or 8 when I went to an acupuncturist here locally, and what he treated me with acupuncture and herbology, and that took care of the anxiety that was like probably prevalent in my life since I was like 9 or 8. He completely got rid of that and got me off the medicines I was on for that. And in terms of the pain, he pretty much reduced it to nothing. And it was at that time I kind of was like, taken aback by the healing aspect and impact of those two modalities. So I started researching and looking up how I can go ahead and become one. And he gave me further advice. He told me that, there's programs that are masters, and there's 32 states that have, I think, accredited acupuncture and Oriental medicine schools. So I enrolled in Boston that same fall, and I did 2 years there, and then I transferred to Chicago just because of the clinical aspect of the school in Chicago had a lot more hands-on, and you get to see more patients in different cases, and for a little bit before going back to Michigan. But before that, I should say I was always been like holistic-minded and open-minded. I've always tried to eat clean and like healthy, along with limiting the Western pharmaceuticals that I intake, rather than and in contrast, I'm always using supplements and different natural healing modalities on myself. And I think that was like part of the direction that it took me to acupuncture. Is I used to be in energy healing before actually practicing acupuncture. I was a Reiki master, which is it's another like alternative healing method that uses the universal energy that we all have, through we channel it through ourselves and heal others with our hands through it by transmitting that energy and freeing blockages that they have in their body.
I love Reiki, of course.
Yeah.
So what got you into the Reiki healing in the first place?
That probably ties into like my psychedelic journey, or ayahuasca in particular. When I would partake in the ceremonies at first, in terms of that, I wasn't initially. But once I got to experience the strength and the impact it has on my life, I decided to join forces with some Peruvian shamans. And what they do is they'll come to different states in the U.S. and partake in ceremonies, and I help facilitate with them. And what that entails is going to each participant and making sure that they're having an experience that they can work through, and if they can't, then I'll work them through it, while that gives free time for the shaman to do his expertise healing on them.
Wow.
But that, I think the psychedelics kind of led me to that path of alternative and holistic healing.
Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit. That's really incredible. But what was it in your life that made you even want to go on the ayahuasca journey?
It was probably also linked to my my other, like, the mental afflictions that I was having since like an early age of like 8 or 9. I would have severe anxiety up until that point, and I had bouts of depression, not the normal depression, kind of like the deeper, hard-hitting depression. No suicidal ideations ever, but it got to a point where just having cognitive behavior therapy with a psychiatrist wasn't enough. So that kind of got me into researching. I think the research led me to really take the courage to try it. And I think speaking with other shamans, or not other shamans, other people that have experienced it firsthand, kind of gave me the assurance that it could be something that can resolve these deep-rooted issues and go to the root of the cause, rather than just treat the surface as medication was doing.
Wow, that's incredible. So the first time you did it, so wait, you're in Massachusetts now, correct?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Michigan, but I bounced back and forth the two states.
Okay. So the first time you did ayahuasca, where were you?
The first time I ever did it was actually in Peru, where it's supposedly by the story of the plant medicine. It was founded by the Shipibo indigenous tribe that's in Iquitos and in southern Peru. I did it at a place called the Temple of the Way of Light, which is in Iquitos, which is a city like surrounded by water and in the middle of the Amazon.
Wow, that's unreal.
Yeah, I did a month there. I actually not just partook in ceremonies. Like right off the bat, I think I was immersed into the whole healing aspect of it. So I volunteered as an energy healer at the time at the facility, and then that led me to kind of delve into the medicine. When I first went there, it wasn't really intentionally to go into ceremony. It was just to help out the center itself, because I'm connected to the owner by a friend. So,
Okay.
but seeing the results of numerous people coming to the retreat and then forever transformed and changed for the better, that kind of made me want to partake into my personal, my personal self in it.
Definitely.
And I think, yeah, and I know it's really a big thing about it too is set and setting, like your state of mind when you go into the ceremony itself, and the setting should be appropriate. I know people have done it, and like the people that have done it stateside have maintained its authenticity, but there are some people that do it recreationally more than rather than healing and self-development, and I think that's where it can go a little bit array.
Okay. So you were in the appropriate space and energy for your first experience. So what happened? Because this is very interesting, to me and our listeners, of course. Like, just what was that like? Because I've heard the first time can go either way. It's usually pretty terrifying, from what I understand, on some level.
Yeah, I think for me it was a little scary at first, going into it. As I started journeying and as the medicine took over, I kind of adhered to like the advice by the shaman, which was to just surrender to it. I think if you do fight like whatever it's trying to show you from your subconscious to the surface, is when you face your difficult moments. But it was in the aspect of like evil or diabolic. I think it was just darkness in terms of seeing yourself and what you have been doing that has affected negatively others, and different things that you kind of put in the back burner or the back of your brain that you wouldn't think of on normal occasion. It kind of resurfaces things, and to look at them differently and change perspectives on things that you wouldn't normally think of. Like for example, I can give an example of two participants that were with me. One was suffering PTSD from being in service in Iraq, and he had to make a decision on killing like a group of villagers that had children, unfortunately, with them. And he was unable to like really come to terms and grasp that aspect of what he had done. I think the medicine showed him that there was a reason for everything that occurs in someone's life, and a reason for someone to go through a extreme difficulty like that. And I think it showed me that on a personal level too. It showed me that, for me, going into it, my goal was to get rid of the anxiety and depression that had manifested for so long with me. And I think it showed me that it's more of a fabrication of how I see the world, rather than what it truly is, which is like a chemical imbalance. But what I was able to achieve from the first ceremony just by itself, which is kind of remarkable, is I think the anxiety and depression at that time went down by like 60%.
Okay.
And that's usually it's a fast acting transformation. They say it lasts for like 30 days to a couple months in the initial ceremony. It's not always like practical to do more than one, but for most people they would need more than one. It's just because it's on a physiological level, what it's doing is rewiring your brain patterns, kind of.
Okay.
And it's rewiring.
So let me ask you this: Is it like unprogramming the brain on some level, the subconscious, like that type of rewiring? I ask that because I do hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming, and so that's a different type of rewiring the brain. But I'm very familiar with, rewiring the brain. So that part is very interesting for me. So that's why I just wanted you to get specific about that. So, okay, so you said it kind of undoes the programming, the subconscious programming that's been done to us throughout our lives.
Yeah.
Okay. Elaborate.
So it reprograms. It reprograms you in a way to look at things differently that you would have looked at like say you would look at something or experience in a negative light. With the ayahuasca during the ceremony itself, if you focus on that particular time of your life, it kind of re-examines it by bringing you there on a mental plane. It's hard to describe, but it physically, in the mind's realm, it feels like you're actually back at that place, wherever it may be in your life as a child or as a teenager or something like that.
That's
and it
really
shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it reprograms your thought experience, your subjective experience in a way that sheds a positive light on it instead of always looking at it in a negative sense before the ceremony.
Wow. So I just want to jump in real quick and say it sounds very similar to what we would do in a hypnosis session. If somebody has like a childhood trauma, we have to bring them back to childhood and then get them to revisit that memory as an adult, when they're not vulnerable. Whereas when you're a child and you view a situation, something that happened to you, you're a child, so the world is still a very scary place and you're vulnerable. But this sounds like it skips that whole process. And there's just one more thing I would like to bring up. So, there's this gland in the brain, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. You're probably more educated on it than I am with everything that you've done. But the pineal gland, right, or the pineal gland, it's the link to your consciousness. So it's like a gland that's like right in the middle of the brain. So over time, just so our listeners know, whoever's not familiar with this, I learned about this, maybe 10 years ago, a little bit more. And it's been a while since I've visited that topic, but I know that gland in the brain, the Egyptians believed that it was the link to our consciousness. It's shaped kind of like a pine cone. That's why it's called like the pineal gland. And basically what happens is in the world that we live in today, it calcifies. So it gets hardened by, I guess, like toxins, calcification process. And that's from things like fluoride in our water and all the different probably type of toxins that we consume or take in or breathe in. I don't know on what level about breathing in, but I do know that once that gland becomes covered and hardened and calcified, our spirituality and our connection to our higher self can feel, it just diminishes actually. And it's harder for us to get back to it. But it sounds like this process with, the ayahuasca, it kind of affects that in some kind of way where, it's either decalcifying or passing that by somehow.
Yeah, it's definitely a very great point you bring up, because it is in the pineal gland that they say the soul, the seat of the soul is in that particular part of the brain, and
Mm-hmm.
it does over time and over the things we take in, especially you mentioned fluoride in the water and other chemicals that we take in. unconsciously when we eat, or if we don't eat as good, it does calcify. And I think what ayahuasca does is it frees that calcification, like you were saying as well. It calcifies it, because they say because the molecule, the DMT molecule, is the psychoactive component of ayahuasca, and other plants besides the vine and the leaf of the ayahuasca tree has DMT based on science, and it's said that we have DMT in the pineal gland, and it gets released in traumatic life experiences or during birth and towards death. So it's been recorded too that people that have had near-death experiences have brain has surged with the DMT molecule itself. So it does. I think there's a huge validity to the pineal gland and the consciousness itself.
Wow. Yes. Okay. So that research was not completely sounds pretty accurate. You never know when you watch conspiracy theories all the time like I do, or even just educational videos. A lot of the stuff on YouTube, you don't, sometimes it's partial truths. So I'm glad that you kind of cleared that up for us today. So, okay, yeah. So let's go back to your experience. So if you could describe this experience the first time as, emotions, let's say, what did you see as well? Like, what did you visually see?
So I was able to connect. I don't think many, I think many have spoken of it, but I felt like, and I don't know if that was my mind communicating or telepathically, but I find I was able to like connect with past diseased relatives in a way that felt like it was like really, really real. Like they were in the room with me and they were and I was talking back, but it wasn't like verbal or audible. It was more like a mental thing.
Wow.
Other things that you feel that is kind of sometimes universal in people that have experienced it is a oneness and a connectivity with everyone and everything. I know that after all these ceremonies that I've done, my compassion and advocacy for the environment and animals and just living things in general have significantly gone up. I've always been like really mindful of like the planet and what we do on an environmental basis, but I think it did it like 1,000 times infinity after doing ceremony. And I always go back to that place in the Amazon, even when I facilitated ceremonies in the States. It takes me back to like the Amazon jungle for some reason or another, and it's not out of the realm of like it kind of makes sense because these plants they do thrive in that environment, and it's kind of taken me back to like root, or you would say Mother Earth in a way.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine. It sounds like a beautiful experience, but like an overwhelming one as well. And I've noticed that you post a lot of very spiritually connected things. And I always wondered, what's up with this guy? Not in a bad way. How did he become so enlightened? So, now it makes sense because it's been your journey, and when people decide to go on a spiritual journey and transform, it's a process that doesn't happen just once and then it stops. It just keeps going. So, and once you wake up, once you become awake, you can't go back to sleep. Am I right?
Yeah. 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 You can't go back to the baseline, as I call it. You're forever evolved, And I think even when you awaken, there's so many levels of vibrational energy that one goes through. Sometimes they don't even do it in one lifetime. And I think besides what they tell us, like through like media or like through like our environment, I think the sole purpose of the soul itself, or us as an individual, is to evolve our self and to be as optimal as we can. And I think that creates an impact on so many others as well. And I think the unifying cause to like live an awakened life is to help others after you've awakened, in a way.
Okay. So, obviously you became a very spiritual person, but would you say that you always were? And do you relate your anxiety as a child to being very connected to the spirit world? Because I know that's common.
I think that's a valid statement. I think I've always been able to sense other people's energy, or kind of like empathically feel the suffering or the sadness of others. And I think as a child, it was hard for me to understand. And I think what was really happening was I was taking the collective emotions of others and putting them with mine.
Absolutely. Empath.
Yeah, empathically for sure. And I think that led me to be depressed on a personal level from the collective. And it was confusing even up to like my young adulthood. I'm 35 right now, but when I was in my early 20s, I was also like really depressed at times. There would be days where I just didn't want to get out of the bed. And I think at that time too, I was unaware of the root cause. And I think it wasn't until the acupuncture and right after that, the doing the ceremonies itself, it propelled me in a like zooming way to like the root cause of what was causing it. And that was to understand that I'm just what's that famous line? We're a spiritual being in a physical body for a time being. And I think that came right in my face after the first ceremony. I think I fully grasped it at that time. And then since that awakening or ceremony, I think it's been a lot easier to deal with the depression or the anxiety. I mean, it's pretty much gone now. When it does surfaces, like the 2% of it, I can handle it with ease now. And I think that's another benefit that most people don't go into. Everyone goes into the ceremonies with different intentions, but I think sometimes I think we forget to like get our mental health as a big factor in it.
Mhm. So, how was the? Okay, let me think of how to word this because you've had so many experiences. I don't necessarily want to compare them per se, but I'm sure there was a sort of evolution in the way that you reacted to the ayahuasca. So, starting out, how did that experience change? Over the course of time, with each time that you did it.
No, that's a great question too. I think there's through ceremonies, what was really unique to me, even though like the things that I would go through on the journey or the trance itself, each ceremony would be similar. The thematic underlying themes would be completely different. Like not two ceremonies were ever the same. I think they just added to like the different layers of like kind of like an onion, peeling an onion. There's like many layers to the onion. There's many layers to one soul, one soul. And I think I was going deeper and deeper of my psyche more and more after each ceremony. It's kind of like examining some specimen under the microscope. You change the magnification and you keep going closer and closer into like what's causing you like anxiety or depression, or for some people that do ceremony for other purposes, like if they want to manifest or be better capable to achieve their goals. That's even a possibility through ayahuasca. And I think it just, for those kind of intentions, I think what the medicine does is it brings you more clues and a closer connection to how you could manifest what you want to. It's hard to describe, but there's like a telepathic element to it. It's not a bad or negative or scary element. It just it somehow it feels like you have an internal dialogue as you're doing the ceremony with the medicine. Once it starts kicking in with its effect.
So you mentioned that there's a sort of a ritual, like a ritual. So what is that ritual, and what do you have to do?
I think it varies by different practitioners, but in general, how it works is, so you'll have your own sacred space and wherever it's administrated. Usually, like, we'll do ceremonies in a circle. Even though it's an individual experience and subjective, there's a element of community and unison. So what most of the shamans do is they'll do like a blessing prayer before we actually go one by one to the shaman to take the medicine itself. They'll do like a protection and a healing prayer. And it's not like religiously affiliated. It's just a universal spiritual saying or a prayer. And then go in an orderly fashion to the shaman himself and take the medicine. It's not the most tasteful thing. It's actually very grotesque, like the taste of it. But you're able to like take it all in. Some shamans will give you like a cocoa-based chocolate to like get the aftertaste out. And then once you take the medicine, you'll go back to your sacred state. Mine is always like a sleeping bag and a pillow, even though I've never like slept through a ceremony. You'll think that you'll be able to sleep through it, but it's kind of like an energetic awakening after you take the medicine. And most ceremonies, or I think like the majority of them, are done throughout the night. So people will start at like 9 p.m. or the shamans usually start at 9 p.m. and it goes to about like 7 a.m. the next morning, and it's a 7 to 8 hour experience. And it kind of, it's pretty powerful. It comes in waves though. Like you'll sense that you're still in your body, but then at other times you'll have like occasions where your mind is elsewhere, and that's when the medicine is working on you at the innermost core. Is when you're having those like kind of out of body experiences.
That's unreal. So let me ask you this. Like, I'm so confused as to what this looks like, and you're doing a great job explaining it on the spiritual level. But for me, I'm trying to understand, and I'm sure the audience who has never done this is, trying to understand. Do you feel high? Do you feel sleepy? Do you want to run around? Do you want to lay down? Like, what happens?
So most shamans will do like music in terms of like healing music with the ceremony. So I think it all depends on the person. I feel sometimes, well, in the first like few ceremonies that I did, it felt like I was paralyzed, but I really wasn't. I was just so engrossed into the moment that, like, I think 7 out of the 8 hours I was like in my sacred space, just laying there or sitting like in meditative state. But then there's some people that'll take the medicine, and then their way of healing is to dance and like be unison with the music.
That would be me.
Yeah.
I think that would be me.
So there is no cardinal rule.
Okay.
What I do is I sing along with the shaman just because like something happens to the music at the time. Besides having your inhibitions go away, I think there's such a pronounced resonance with the music that it feels like energy waves coming at you when you hear the singing and the music. And it'll take some of the people that could never sing in their life to sing like beautiful, beautiful melodies.
Wow. I cannot wait to try this. I was in Argentina. What was that?
And I forgot that part of it, actually. That's good that you asked me that because you reminded me of it. And I think it's like, I think my appreciation for music and sensory things in that realm like exponentially increased after ceremony, because it's hard to describe, but it just feels like the lyrics and the tone and beats of the music comes at you in waves, and like it's healing in itself, because that's the idea in the indigenous tribes. They call them Aquiros, and they're like Spanish shaman healing songs, and they usually, the shamans I work with will play them during the ceremony itself.
So I'll just jump in real quick and just mention that sound is one of the most healing elements, I guess we could call it, that we have. You know, I'm a big fan of binaural beats because whatever frequency you want to be vibrating at, you can literally change your physiological response in your body. Even if you're not feeling well, you can put on some meditation music with, you know, a frequency of 777 hertz, and you're going to be feeling a lot more peaceful after that. So I can just imagine what the shamans are using and the knowledge that they have that's been passed down for who knows how long. So I find that so fascinating and amazing. I was just going to say, you know, I spent a month in Argentina, and I really wanted to go to Peru, but this was years ago. My older son, he's 13 now. He was a baby. So it was a little hard to really travel a lot. So I made it to like a couple different places in Buenos Aires and the mountains in Argentina. But like I said, I really did want to go to Peru. So it's definitely on my list. And if I did, you know, go there, this would be the first thing I'd want to do.
Yeah, it's an amazing country. I've been there numerous times since. Ever since I took my first, ever since I did the month at the Temple of Way of Light, or at the retreat center, it captivated me, the country itself, and the subsequent times I've done ceremony, but that wasn't like the main purpose. Since then, I've connected with like soul lodge centers, and I've been doing conservation work for the Amazon and kind of protecting it for the indigenous people from like oil companies and what do you call it? Not carpenters, but like lodging companies. Mm-hmm. And so my dual purpose now, when I've gone to Peru, I think the last time I went was a year ago in December, was to further the cause for conservation, but also do ceremonies in between. And the good thing with South America and Central America, there's other places too. If someone doesn't have the means to go to Peru, I know like Costa Rica has a lot of it's a huge culture and ayahuasca too, and that's another like thing too.
I have friends there who were very much involved in that, and I know one person that holds retreats, and for that reason. So, and I've heard really amazing things. Businessmen who haven't been the most spiritual throughout their lives, they're looking for purpose or meaning, and they end up going on one of these retreats and having the ayahuasca spirit molecule experience, and they're literally transformed. And like you did, they keep going back because it's just so incredible for them.
Yeah, there's we might know a mutual friend. His name is Gerard Powell. He has a place in Costa Rica. Gerard has a really, really unique story too. He was a Silicon Valley guy, technology guy. He thought that life was just to attain goals and material aspects, and he sold his company to like this one, I think it was Google or Apple, for like $250 million, and he started living a fast life of drinking and partying and sex and all these other like vices. Not necessarily vices, but he was taking it to an extreme. And one day he got tired of it and he wanted to help himself. So regular rehab didn't help him. What helped him was he went down to Costa Rica and did ceremonies there, and it totally transformed him to the point of, instead of being materialistic and buying things for self-indulgence, he created a center in Costa Rica called Rhythmia, and I think they've been on they've been doing ceremonies for like 6 or 7 years, but he does it from like a really good sound medical aspect. Like it's like a retreat center, but it's super enhanced because he'll bring like psychiatrists, psychologists, these like really.
Yes, I am in touch with him. Yes.
Yeah, I figured he would be because he knows.
I just put it all together as you were describing, because I recognized the name, but until you started going into the story, I didn't realize it was him. And yes, that's incredible. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, no. So Gerard is like someone that I've looked up to for a long time. I've been to Rhythmia for a week stay, and it's very profound too, because I think that's another thing too with the medicine itself. Is to build the trust with the shamans and people that facilitate. That's a very important thing, especially down in Peru, because not to make people scared of it, but there are shamans that do it there for like not the right intentions, and they can cast like spells, which they call it bruja, which is black magic. But what I'm getting to is having someone that that's trustworthy is another good factor. And like with Rhythmia and Gerard, the way he administrates it is really good too. And that's the other thing, with each shaman has his own unique style. So I think that makes it vastly interesting too as a participant when you do different ceremonies with different shamans. It alters like your perspective as well, and it increases the healing too.
That's incredible. So I wanted to tell you about this, since you're so familiar with that territory and, of course, the shamans. So by the grace of divine timing, I guess you could say, I was living in Toronto. I lived there for 10 years. So there were these Kogis. They were called Kogis. They're shamans from this tribe in the mountains of Colombia. They say that they're 4,000 years old. They have writing from 4,000 years old, like carved into stone. And what they do with their shamans is when a baby's born, you know, whoever the pre-existing shamans are, they choose the next shaman as a baby, and they leave them in the dark, but I don't say leave them like abandon them. They're raised in the dark so that they can never see sunlight, so that they use their spiritual powers more than they use their eyes, so that they're not just focused on the physical world, if that makes sense. And when they're, did they do something similar like that with those shamans? Because I know that when they're 18 or so, they slowly introduce them to the sunlight, but they're already highly intuitive, obviously, psychic, spiritual, you know, whatever you want to call it. And that's how the shamans are, you know, created in a way. I'm sure they're taught a lot all over those years. But the crazy part was I got to go to a gathering somehow through a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends, this girl, Lorella. She's going to be on the show next week. Anyway, she found out about this private gathering, and the shamans were coming out of their tribe for only the second time ever because they wanted to come and tell the world that the earth is sick and we're basically destroying it. And they call themselves Big Brother and we're Little Brother because they're so much more knowledgeable than we are. But yeah, I didn't know if you know anything about them, but it was very, very interesting. And there was a guy who, you know, came across their tribe by accident when he was hiking in the mountains of Colombia, and I believe he was Canadian. He did a documentary on them. That's why they ended up in Canada. He brought them there to start sending out their messages to humanity that we're messing shit up, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned Canada because they're very more open-minded to these medicines and other things in general. They actually, I think they legalized psychedelics in general a year ago. But there's a really good individual named, he's a psychiatrist of addiction and mental health. His name is Gabor Mate, and he's from the Vancouver, British Columbia area. He's a big advocate of healing individuals with ayahuasca itself, and I think he's spent time down there and spent it with like tribes, and he's discovered that it's life changing in terms of people with PTSD and health related or mental health related issues. And his goal that now there's that legalization is to create not ayahuasca but more like DMT clinics in like Western Canada and throughout the other areas of Canada, which I think is remarkable.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, Canada was amazing, and I know a lot of people in kind of like the spiritual communities that are from there, more so than I know in the U.S., but I haven't lived in the U.S. in quite a long time, but I do know a lot of spiritual people there too, but I know just so many more, I guess, in Canada just because I lived there through some, you know, pretty crucial years of my growth and development, and yeah, I moved there when I was about 21. So I lived there for 10 years. Yeah, I lived there for 10 years. Now I'm in Serbia, obviously, for the last almost 8 years. But, yeah, I met a lot of people when I was there because I lived in Toronto, and, you know, it's a huge city. It's got, you know, a huge population. But, so back to your evolutionary process. You know, each time you had a new experience, you know, the next time that you did ayahuasca, what did you like more about it each time?
That the darker elements were getting reduced each time. That's because I think that correlates with like what was going on with me mentally and physically after each ceremony. It was like that was a way for me to measure like progress. So the less darkness and the less shadow side self of my issues that I was seeing, the more that I knew I was healing. And I think the energy levels in general, like on a physical and a mental aspect, I think those improved as a side as a positive side aspect of continuing to work with the medicine. Mm-hmm. And I think the healing itself just continues to evolve after each ceremony. It was kind of hard to decipher what I was like downloading or getting in terms of knowledge from the medicine when I first did it, or like the first few times. But then it became like a language where I started understanding what the trance or the journey internal, like mentally, as I was going through the medicine during ceremony was telling me. So I was able to decipher it more on a linguistic level. So I was able to integrate it more. That's another thing that I should mention is a really good thing to do, and most good shamans do it, is help you integrate the experience, which is a key thing, because it's one good thing to be able to do, to be able to learn from the ceremony, but then to apply it is where the integration comes in. And there's a really good site. I gotta find it, but it's from like different healers and psychiatrists that are U.S. based that have like a organization that is affiliated with integration.
Okay.
Because the more you can integrate the process, the better the healing will be, if that makes sense.
Okay. It does make sense. So when you have somebody with you, you mentioned that you help out at these retreats. So when you have a new person, let's say, do you talk to them about what they're going to experience before? What does that process look like?
I don't talk to them about their personal like intentions so as much. I'll say kind of what they're kind of. I don't delve into like detail or history of why their intention is the way it is, but I do ask them what their intention is for the reason to be able to help them as they're going through the journey, because a lot of times what their intention is will be brought up to the surface during the ceremony. And what I do is, if they're having like a hard time or having an emotional breakdown, or they're struggling to get through an aspect of the journey itself because they're not fully surrendering, or they're not wanting to see that aspect or that part of it, then I'll help them guide them through that to be able to work through it and to get like the most optimal healing they could. Another thing is the shamans I work with, the way I know that they're really authentically caring and want the best for someone is they do a thorough like medical history background and a questionnaire before people join the ceremony, just because there's not many going to ceremony or taking part in a ceremony. They just want to make sure that the person won't do more damage than good if they go into a ceremony. And we've never had to turn down someone because they're not mentally ready for it or something like that. And it's quite the opposite. I think the people that have that are going through mental difficulties heal the most. And what I've done with like the recent ceremonies that I've helped facilitate is we've worked with veterans with PTSD, and it's showed a significant improvement in their PTSD symptoms and just their overall well-being. A lot of them actually have said that their PTSD has gone away completely, which is remarkable too.
Wow. I've heard that before, and that's amazing because PTSD is one of the hardest things to come through. And, there's a lot of different types of therapy available for it, and it does get better. From what I understand, it takes a lot of time. So if there's a way around that faster, that's incredible because it's terrifying having PTSD, especially, any PTSD. I don't even want to compare what's worse or better. PTSD is PTSD. It's really such a heavy thing to have to deal with, and the symptoms make you feel like everything that you're emotionally experiencing are actually real when they're not. Again, going back to the subconscious mind, like we were saying earlier, our subconscious programming is there to protect us, but it doesn't always serve us, right? So
yeah,
that's where the tricky part comes in about being human, So
that's true.
Yeah. So I love this. I think it's this whole conversation is very enlightening. It's interesting too because you can talk to other people who've had spiritual awakenings or spiritual experiences or are on a spiritual journey, and they'll get it. But when you try to explain stuff like this to people who are just not open to their higher self or any type of spirituality or, that type of journey, they don't really get it. And so I really love doing shows like this, and it's important to me to open people's minds who may be kind of on the fence about wanting to feel something more in life and connect deeper, connect more deeply with people, like you said, the earth, animals, people, just in general, like having that type of bond and awareness. So I think that an episode like this will hopefully push them in the right direction. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's important to have that connection on a deeper level in life. I think it helps everyone involved. I think it gives yourself, the person, a deeper level of appreciation for life. And then I think at the same time you're helping so many others because your outlook is good. It kind of vibrates to the others, and I think it kind of pushes you to do more good for others and the planet.
Absolutely. Exactly. It's definitely a journey, though. I've realized that there have been some people in my life that I just can't explain certain things to because they haven't experienced it yet. And it can be frustrating because you just want them to have a spiritual awakening. But even when you do, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And I'm not even saying that it's a complete peachy, happy, pristine, blissful process. It's not at times. But what you come out of it with is where the beauty is at, right? So, yeah, at first, a lot of the crumbling of the old dynamics that you once knew, or let's say you were comfortable with, because that's what you were used to, when that starts to crumble in front of your eyes and you become connected to the energy spirit world, it can be pretty overwhelming. Like you said, when you first did, whether you do it with ayahuasca or you do it with meditation or you do it with knowledge, because sometimes all of a sudden you start researching and something just hits you and you realize, it throws you into a spiritual awakening, or you have a negative experience in life and that throws you into a spiritual awakening. But, what I mean is there can be a trigger, and it starts somewhere, but it just doesn't happen overnight, and it can start with something kind of scary, you know.
Yeah,
But like you
absolutely.
were saying, it gets better over time. Even the perfect example is even with you with the ayahuasca, the darkness started being as visible in your experiences. Your shadow self started to dissipate over time because clearly you had worked on that spiritually.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's very true, and it 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 does get better. That's a big thing, and I think for people that are like hesitant or scared to try it or go into it, I think that's one word or that's one statement that gives comfort. I think it definitely did for me when I was kind of pulled and magnetized and attracted to do it, but I was fearful of what I would see. I think that helped me in my assurance that it does get better and that working through it is a lot better than always dodging and running from your fears or your shadow self.
So, what would you say is your next kind of journey going to be? Do you have a plan, or do you just go with the flow and say, okay, this has presented itself, and this is what I'm going to do next?
I tend to mostly go with the flow. I've always been that way, and I think the medicine has showed me that it's probably best for me on a personal level to do that. And the reason I say that is I've always been a fan of quantum physics, and I forgot to mention this too during ceremony. During a ceremony, the perception of time and space itself is not like really relevant or present. And with some neuroscientists and neurologists and people that study like consciousness, they've come to a conclusion that in reality, like even though no one has died and come back to describe it, they say that soul in its essence has no time and space either. So it's hard to describe though, but when you are in that journey and when you are doing the medicine itself, you're aware of it, but at the same time you're kind of not. But there really is no time and space. Like sometimes I've experimented with it. I'll look at my clock and it'll say like 1 a.m. in the morning and the medicine is still kicking in, and I'll look at my clock 5 minutes later and it'll say 1:05, but it felt like it was like 5 hours or so.
Wow.
Yeah,
cool.
That's a very cool aspect to me, that notion of no time and space, because it kind of like dissolves those limits or limitations in a way.
That's incredible. I'm a huge fan of quantum physics as well.
Yeah.
During my first... Yep, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, please. I'll tell you later. It's just about quantum physics, just learning about it. But what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying, it was something really brief. I was saying a lot of like psychedelic experiences in the psychedelic realm kind of correlates with quantum physics in terms of like the way you see things during ceremony and the way how time and space is not construed as a term. So it's just like interesting how the two kind of go hand in hand together.
Wow, that's very interesting. So one of the things, just so our listeners who aren't super familiar with quantum physics, you know, the one powerful experiment that I saw, which, to be honest with you, I had to watch multiple times just to understand it, because this was 10 plus years ago, probably more like 13 years ago or something like that. I saw on YouTube. It was a quantum physics experiment called a slit experiment, I believe, where they were throwing molecules through a slit in, like, let's say it was a piece of cardboard, but every single time making different patterns on the wall. And the scientists, the quantum physicists, couldn't figure out why there was a different pattern on the wall every single time, because they were doing the same thing over and over. And what they figured out was that it was the observer, meaning the person in the room, their observation of that experiment was changing the pattern. So for those of you who don't believe that your thoughts create your reality, wrong.
Yeah, I think I might have seen that before too on a YouTube video, and it blew me away too. And you're absolutely on point with what you said. It is like it is, perception is everything, I believe. There's like good books on quantum physics. There's also one of my favorite authors is Deepak Chopra, and he always talks about the consciousness awareness, and like how we see reality through our own conceptions and things of that nature, and not the way around. Like, reality doesn't mold us; we mold reality in a way.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that the other things don't happen. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a quantum physicist, so it's really not my place to say. But yeah, the knowledge that I have acquired, and self-education. I'm a huge fan of Bruce Lipton as well. For example, he has a lot of great points. A lot of it is our frequency. The way that we're vibrating based on how we're feeling, and so when you want to manifest something, the best way to manifest what you want is to make sure that you're in a state of awe first. So Bruce Lipton refers to it as the honeymoon effect, which I think is so brilliant, because when you're in love, or when you have a baby as a woman, or, when you fall in love, or when you're looking at the stars in awe of nature, and the vastness and the beauty of this world and universe, you're in a state of awe. And the amazing thing is, that's your best time to manifest the things that you want. So bringing yourself to that frequency first, making sure that you're in a state of love first, is the first step in creating what it is you want. Then you focus on what you want with intention, because we walk around all day basically with our random thoughts, because we're human and that's the way our brain works, and a lot of them are negative. So you're basically attracting that. But if you take an hour a day, or even 20 minutes a day, with a state of love and intention, and manifest and focus on what you want, it's so much more powerful than the random thoughts that you have and are attracting with throughout the day, because those aren't your intentions, and the universe recognizes intention. So Bruce Lipton so he's just brilliant, because he breaks that down so well, and obviously it ties right in with quantum physics. So
I love Bruce too. I think one of his I've read one of his great books. I think it was The Biology of Belief.
Yes,
I
love that book.
Yeah, I've read it more than once. I actually use it like from time to time, or I go back to it from time to time and highlight things that have happened to me on a personal level, and what he says in the book. But it's definitely true. I believe it's you're right too to say that not like other things haven't happened, but I think how we view things can ultimately like mold the situation to how you want it to be. It's not always like this was destined to be, or it was set in the stars. I think we can, manipulate it to how we want things to be sometimes, more so than other times.
I agree with that. I also do find it very interesting how, they do say the things that are set in our destiny or in our fate are the things that we chose to experience before we were born for our soul's evolution, for our own personal growth. So maybe there is something, there are certain things that are fated because we chose them. They say we choose, our children choose us. I think it's that's what I heard. I can't remember it exactly, but I don't know if it's we choose each other or the children choose their parents. But everything that, like all of our twin flames, soul ties, soul family that we experience lessons with, we chose that. So, I don't know if you know a lot about like twin flames or soulmates, but like a twin flame is the type of relationship that they say we chose to experience with person before we were born. And they act as a trigger for us in so many ways. So the relationship can be completely chaotic, has a lot of ups and downs, but at the same time, it's like you feel drawn to and love that person so much, but they create so much turmoil in your life and vice versa. And that's what twin flames are supposed to do. And you chose that person before you were born to experience all of that with, for your own souls, for each other's souls' evolution. So when you're aware of that, you can understand what the lessons are and grow from it. But if you don't understand what that is, then you just end up feeling lost, damaged, confused. Not that I'm not saying it's not damaging anyway, but then like you have your soulmate relationships where there's various different types of soulmate relationships. They're not just, like romantic relationships. They're all different types of relationships, friends, family, like romantic. There's different types. And they also serve a purpose, but a soulmate will usually lift you up and make you love yourself more, and it's just a very different dynamic. So I do believe, so my views are a little bit mixed because I do believe in that. That's been my personal experience in life, and I don't ever tell anybody what they should or shouldn't believe. It's for them to decide. But that resonates with me from the experiences that I've had in my relationships and in my life. But the quantum physics as well, I feel like there's a certain amount of life, of our experience that we create with our thoughts and our frequency. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's true. I think we kind of we're kind of destined in a way. There's like I've read about that too. That we have like soul contracts with people prior to even entering the physical realm or the physical body. But I've also read that it doesn't have to be concrete. I've always been fascinated with the twin flame, like literature too. I think that's from what I hear and from what I've known with others that have had really good relationships and then they divorced for some reason or separated ways, that they were they were predetermined to be like that.
Okay.
I think there's a whole lot of like evidence into that there are like soul contracts and people are things are written for them before it happens. But I also believe in like free will and like the ability to like change things. So
yeah,
I think
I agree.
for me, so I think it's like there's a balance in my mind of the two things correlating at the same time, which goes back to quantum physics. Because in quantum physics, I think they say like 5 different actions can be happening at the same time. It doesn't have to be like linear. I think it could be non-linear, and I think that's what happens with the things that when you come into your body, there's things that have been soul written out for you already, but it doesn't mean that they're not able to be altered.
Absolutely. So I feel like the lessons that we chose, we learn them. Us, what we do after that. It's up to us how fast we want to evolve from that situation and understand what the lesson was, And like you said, we can choose to break that cycle in whatever way we want. So when you break a cycle, you evolve because you learned your lesson. You wouldn't have broken the cycle unless you had learned your lesson. So it's very interesting, and I don't think that the relationship has to necessarily stay together or fall apart. Like you said, it's free will, but it's the lesson that we chose, right?
Yeah, no, that's very well said too. Yeah, it is definitely the lesson more so than the actual like physical connection or the bond that you feel with that person. I think there was probably a lesson that it's similar to those like quotes that say take the good with the bad because everything has a purpose or a lesson to it.
Mhm. I see a lot of your posts that they resonate with me because they're of a energy or spiritual nature or mindset or attitude, towards life. So I always appreciate your posts. I'm going to put us on hold just for 2 minutes, maybe less. Somebody's calling in, so I'm just going to screen the caller. So we'll be right back. Just stay on the line.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. You there? Hello, hello. Did I lose you? Hello, hello. I think I lost you. Are you back on? Sorry, guys. Just give me 1 sec. I'm going to connect back to Amad. Do I have you back on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I lost you for a couple of minutes. I was trying to get you back on, but...
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, no, I was just saying I was here the whole time.
Oh, weird. I had to refresh my page. But anyway, okay, we're back. So quantum physics, that's where we left off. So I don't have a co-host, so I have to screen calls myself. And I don't add people in who don't know either of us because I've had some weird callers and they say really stupid things sometimes on the show. Like people with no lives calling in just to say stupid crap. So, it happens. It happens. But so what's your next step in life? I know that you're on this spiritual journey. How does the type of work you do tie into, who you are as a person and this whole spiritual journey that you've been on?
So that's a great question too. I think the journey itself has molded me to the person I am. So I think that moving forward with whatever I do, there's always going to be a purpose and a greater good behind it.
Amazing.
So currently, besides the acupuncture and Oriental medicine that I do as a profession, I've come back to the finance world, and I've I'm helping run 2 funds that invest in biotech companies is one of them, and then the other is cannabis companies and social impact. So prior to my whole awakening and my journey on a new level with spirituality, I was basically like investing in companies and things like that just for the bottom line. And I think that changed completely. There's always a rhyme or reason with what I choose to invest in now as a VC. I choose like companies that have like a greater good with them. I know, and I do that on a personal investment level too. For instance, one of the companies like 5 years back I invested in was it's a huge company now, but it's called Tom's, the shoemaker. Their concept is for every shoe that someone buys, donate another pair to like some people, like a less fortunate individual, or they give that proceed. They give some of their profits to like different causes.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I think, and it, not just professionally, but I think on a personal level, I'm more aware of my time and actions, and I tend to do things that make me feel better and help others, for the sake of the connectiveness and what I've experienced in the spiritual sense, kind of like what I've seen, like what life's purpose could be on a spiritual path. I kind of move that forward to whatever things I do in terms of like helping others or volunteering, or like what I've been doing in Peru for the last 2 or 3 years with the conservation work. I think that was probably in me all along, that I had that compassion for animals and the planet, but I think it showed me how deep it is with the ceremonies and the medicine itself.
Mhm. Fascinating. You have a really interesting life, and I think it takes a strong person to go on a spiritual journey, and people sometimes misjudge those who are on like a spiritual journey, like, oh, that's for like soft people, or like ego kind of takes over. People who don't get it, they're a little bit judgmental of spiritual people or people who are on a spiritual journey. It takes a strong person to be on a spiritual journey. It's not easy,
Yeah.
It's not easy constantly working on yourself and and constantly evolving and facing harsh truths, and speaking your own harsh truth and facing yourself in your dark side, your shadow side. That's a lot of what a lot of people who are not like wrapped up in anything spiritual or on that type of journey is, our shadow side. Some people are living completely in their shadow side of themselves, and they don't even know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another thing is, when we do screen participants that want to go into ceremony with us, one of the big things I ask is, or the shaman does, and I also reiterate it, is are you going in this to actually do the work on yourself, or are you trying to do it for the high, which is the blissful high feeling is there, but it's not really the be-all, do-all for the ceremony.
Great question. Okay.
Yeah, for the purpose. It's not really the do-all and be-all in terms of doing the ceremony. I think doing the work itself is like the main goal, or should be the main goal, because at the end of the day, you want to become better, and in order to become better, you do have to do the work in facing your shadows and seeing that aspect of you that you kind of like, that we suppress generally or don't think about because it's not always right in our face.
Mhm. And I get the impression from some people who are not as familiar with the spiritual journey or awakening either, that they think that spiritual people or people who are on a spiritual journey, that we think we're better than others. No, we don't. We're actually more willing to face our darkness and our problems and our flaws in our personalities than somebody who's ego driven and ego run, who's never going to admit when they make a mistake, who's always going to deny any responsibility for themselves if they're, in like a more extreme example of somebody who's living in their ego. It's hard to understand, your own shortcomings as a human being or your weaknesses. It takes a strong person to face your weaknesses and actually admit to them and work on them, So,
Yeah.
But I love the question that you ask them, like, do you want to get high, or are you looking to do the work? That's such a great question because it completely, right off the bat, gives you the insight into that person's motive for themselves, their own agenda, basically.
Exactly.
I don't know. I find this so interesting. So you've done this, you said 20 plus times. Does it become less effective after you've done it that many times, or do you learn something completely brand new about yourself every single time you do it?
I think it's the latter, but that's a very, very good question. I thought that it would like dissipate the therapeutic effects, or kind of like I was thinking like Western medicine, when you take something for so long, your body builds up a tolerance and you have to take more and more, and then eventually the effects wear off and never come back. Well, I think it's something different each time I work on different aspects of things that I go into intention with. And I think some of the things that I've worked on, like emotional-wise or like mentally wise, like depression and anxiety, I think there's layers to the things that I work on. So it's not like they just, it's not like it just goes away. They become kind of something that I work on. And it's easier, it gets easier each time to integrate the experiences rather than it gets easier to integrate the experiences post ceremony each time, as opposed to like the first time when it was hard to kind of wrap my head around what I experienced. Now it kind of makes sense even more, like what I do experience.
That's incredible. So if you were to give any advice to a person who's thinking about going on a journey like this using ayahuasca, what would it be?
That they should surrender to the process itself. Another one would be make sure your heart and mind are solely aligned with the fact that you're going to do the work, and that you're going into it with the right intentions. There is a great site for the audience and the listeners. It's pretty simple. The URL. It's www.ayahuasca.com. Kinds of information from like the spiritual part to scientific, to what to expect and what to do pre-ceremony. A lot of shamans and most facilitators adhere to like a specific set of rules before ceremony, like 3 days at least prior to. One would be like no meat or fatty foods. A second thing would be no sexual activity, either with self or partner. And I think all those and then the third is I think no fermented foods, I believe. And those diet and like physical restrictions are just because you want to go into the ceremony with the purest and cleanest body and mind for it to optimally heal.
That is such a fantastic point, and I love that you just brought those things up, because when we eat meat, we consume another energy from a conscious, from a sentient being, let's say. But it's an energy. The same with, having sex. Whoever your partner, like I've learned this in the last couple of years, which I'm a huge believer in now. You exchange a massive amount of energy with your sexual partner. So you better make sure that that's an energy that you even want to entertain in your life, because you're not just having sex. You're literally exchanging energy on a major level, absorbing it from another person. So I can understand why the shamans are saying don't eat meat, don't eat fatty foods, sexual partners, all of that, So I find that
absolutely.
interesting. Is that the reason why, or do they not give you the reason?
I think that is for one thing. I think it's to not like make your ceremony experience like energetically bad. I also think it is the collective. Like you might energetically affect others, even though that's not your intention. But I think those things that they mention, when mixed with ceremony, isn't always the best result. So even if someone did it on his own, and then because ceremony is a collective as well, I think it affects other people's aura and energy. So it's like it's a self-respect or a self-plan as well as like the collective.
And your own pure energy of just you, right? Like your own. So you're coming into it. I know it's a collective experience with whoever you're there with, right? But you're coming into it with a cleaner energy, it sounds like. That's why they recommend that.
Exactly.
That makes sense. That makes complete sense. I love this episode. This is so great. These topics just excite me, and I don't know, I just love them. So when you go into one of these retreats or whatever you call them, and you have everybody who's about to go on this journey with ayahuasca, and you ask people, are they there to get high or are they there to do the spiritual work? What's the percentage look like of people who say, yeah, I'm here to get messed up or I'm here to really do the spiritual work?
To be honest, it's not as many that come in for like just to get the high or to get like their fix, if you want to say. I would say like 1% out of all ceremonies that I've helped facilitate and partake in have been individuals like that, but the majority, like 99%, have come in to do the work and wanting to do it for the healing and the purpose of evolving and being like optimal in their mental state and physical.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I was wondering.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, that when you mentioned it earlier, I forgot to ask you, and I was really interested to hear, because I know a lot of people who, when they hear about it, they think it's going to be like tripping out. You know what I mean? But it's totally different than that. From what I've heard and from what you're telling me, it's you experiencing things as your soul, as your higher self. It's literally a breakdown, a crumbling of the material reality that we know and grew up in. if that's what I've heard, and it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's different too. I think I know what you meant by when there's some that want to just get trippy and get like in that psychedelic state.
And I just want to say that's fine too. I'm not against that either. But I just wanted to make the distinction. But sorry, continue.
No, it's absolutely fine with me too. No, I agree with you. It's different though. I think with ayahuasca, I don't know what it is. It may be the energy of the medicine itself, but unlike LSD or like shroom or psilocybin mushrooms, that people do those for the visual and the hallucinogenic effects. I think, or with ayahuasca, it's more people tend, from what I've seen, people do it more for the healing and the getting better aspect of it.
That's amazing. I mean, it's amazing because they're there for the right reasons, because that's what's going to happen. They're not going to, that's what it does. So it's good that they come there with the right intentions is what I mean, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what else can you tell us that is interesting about some of the experiences you've had on it? What was the most powerful realization or awareness that you had while on this?
So that's a great question. I think that goes back to the aspect of me being able to somehow telepathically communicate or connect with diseased loved ones. And I think by just that pronounced experience, whether it's the figment of my imagination or it's actually the medicine or it's reality itself, I think that connection with like souls in that respect, because I'm a big paranormal guy too. I've done paranormal investigations, and I've seen things in like the 3D realm. I think putting that connection with souls that you were connected to and you loved while they were earthbound, and feeling them or hearing them or seeing them in the spiritual sense, I think that makes it a profound impact on me, because that just kind of reaffirms what I've always believed, is that the consciousness or our persona or like what makes us besides the body lives on. Mm-hmm. That was like my ultimate revelation, is that, like once I went through it, I felt like the trance or the experience itself kind of resembles what the afterlife is. And I was never like a big person to like think about things that happen postpartum, but now it kind of captivated me too. I think that whole I've always been a person that studied consciousness as well, as in like where does it come from, what happens to it when the brain and the heart and the body seizes and things of that nature. And I've had a few friends that have had their brush with death by near-death experiences, and they've come back through resuscitation and, have remarkably been altered by it. And I think the closest, like, near-death experience I've had without actually having, like, a physical one has been doing the medicine itself, because I think it brings me closest what the soul is like in its real self.
That is incredible. I mean, it's interesting that you brought this up. I went ghost hunting once with a friend of mine. I think it was last summer. He's a good friend, family friend, and he's a detective in the town that I grew up in, and we went ghost hunting in a cemetery. So I'm totally interested in the paranormal as well. He had all the equipment, like he does that. Like he's done some pretty awesome, he's made some pretty cool discoveries, going into abandoned buildings and, old homes and whatnot. So it was an interesting experience for me for sure. I didn't see anything that night, but it was the only time I ever went. But I've always been very kind of connected to that topic as well, because I saw a lot of weird things as a kid. But beyond that, you mentioned near-death experiences. So I think it was right after I got my journalism degree, I became obsessed with near-death experiences. I researched them for probably 6 months or more. Just constantly, I was just so obsessed with the topic, and just the things that these people saw. Actually, like you said, a lot of them died and were brought back to life. So near death, yes, they did die. They were brought back to life, though, and the things that they saw were just inexplicable. So that was pretty powerful research for me. But I find it pretty incredible that, you've had a close experience on ayahuasca. So obviously, I'm very anti-drug. I don't look at ayahuasca as a drug. It's a medicine to me as well from the research I've done. I think acid is definitely something people should stay away from. It's not healthy, and it's not good for the body or the brain. But there are other natural things that I'm not against for sure. But at this point in my life, I am, pretty anti. I've seen a lot of addiction in my life. Let's just say that, and I've had my own experience. I've had my own experiences, and it's destructive and unhealthy, and it hurts the soul. It damages the spirit. So it's very different than this to me. And I'm really looking forward to having an experience. I'm very big on meditation. You probably know that. Is it something that took me a lot of practice? Absolutely. There are days where I have such a hard time focusing, but I know that I need to do it. So I guess my issue even with meditation is I have to remember to do it when I'm feeling good too, because I'll start meditating like crazy when I'm going through something hard, just so I can stay grounded and get through it. But those are the times where I do a lot of my spiritual work. But lately, just to stay on track, I make sure and I try very hard to still meditate when I'm also feeling good, even if it's just to give thanks and, express gratitude, right? So that's something that keeps me in that state of love and state of awe as much as possible. I get pissed. I get angry, just like everybody. I'm not a guru, but you know what I mean. So my question to you is, how much of your life, you're so dedicated to spiritual topics and spiritual practices. So where does meditation play a part in your life? And if it's not meditation, what is it that's similar that you do?
Actually, it is meditation as much as I would say yoga too. And I think as I started awakening, and a little bit prior to that, I started partaking in yoga and meditation. It was hard initially with meditation. It probably took me like 3 to 4 months to really get relaxed and into the finite. Just because my mind always races, and I can't sometimes let things go thinking wise. But then after being able to meditate and finding the huge mental and emotional and clarity that I was able to retain from it, I think it's always been embedded with me I've become more aware and spiritual. And I think what the ayahuasca ceremonies have also done is they've also opened my meditation ability even on a more deeper level. But I think I've always been not always. I mean, since like the last 7 or 8 years, I've always participated in yoga as a physical activity and meditation as like a self-development spiritual practice.
Excellent. Would you say that it took you a lot of time to kind of find the type of meditation that works for you? Because people ask me all the time, like, well, how do you meditate? And my process is very unique to me. It's not something that I would say I learned per se. I created it. Exactly,
yeah. It's, I think, I agree 100% with that. And I think that's a very, very great point. I think I did play around with different kinds. Initially, I would do like a mantra one, and then I would do what other ones? Listening to binaural beats as well. The one I do now is slightly different. It's actually gazing at a flame of a candle for like 10 minutes. And then I close my eyes for another 10 minutes, but play light music. And I find that that's been the optimal way. I do like 20 minutes a day. Sometimes I'll do like a morning and a evening session, but most of the time I do it like as soon as I wake up in the morning.
That's really cool. I personally meditate in water almost always.
Amazing too.
What's that?
I was saying that's amazing too. I think water is so healing in so many ways, and I've never heard that before, but I'm incorporating it too.
Yep, I put on my favorite meditation music. There's a channel called Metaverse Music on YouTube. It is hands down the most intense and deeply spiritual music I have ever heard. And I know that, people connect to different things, and that's fine, but I have shared that a lot on my Facebook, and a lot of people really found it healing as well. They have angel frequencies, which is like 777 hertz, 888 hertz.
Oh, wow.
There's all different ones for, obviously different frequencies, but some of them truly sound like angels. So I'll just like hot bath, like very warm water, put that type of music on, and I don't know, it just puts me in that zone where it helps me to meditate faster and easier. Whereas if I'm laying in bed at night after a long day and my mind is filled with everything that happened that day, it's a lot harder for me. It's a lot harder for me to let go of the thoughts. It's a lot harder for me to focus. So, yeah, that's just what works for me. And I think as an empath, somebody who's very sensitive to other energies, and, I pick up on such subtleties I can't even describe. It's almost a psychic, intuition, verge of psychic type of knowing about certain things. It's a lot sometimes, and I feel like the warm water really helps to kind of let a lot of things release, to let them go. So that's something that definitely works for me. But, to each their own.
Exactly, yeah, and I agree. There is something that resonates with letting go and setting the weight off you with meditation. I think for me it's metaphoric, but it feels like it's a physical and mental thing too.
Definitely. I can relate to that. Absolutely. Yeah. So if people I don't know how open you are to this, but if there is somebody looking to take the ayahuasca journey, would you be willing to speak to them, and would you be willing to share your social media, with anybody to kind of ask you questions, or, where to go, or do you want to just give a website or something before we close out today?
No, I'm open to all of the. They can reach me. They can reach me through social media, or that is the only way. I mean, or if they even want to talk, I can give you authority, Jessica, to put my number out there, and I can definitely guide them and talk to them. And then the website that I was mentioning earlier is a really great source. It's www.ayahuasca.com. That has plenty of information on it.
Excellent. I wouldn't recommend giving out your number personally, but social media is, I think, probably the best idea. And if anybody reaches out to me and is on my social media, if you're listening to this, chances are you already know about my show and what my social media is. Alternatively, you can reach out to Amad Elia yourself on Facebook or Instagram, and he will give you some guidance. But, I think, like you said, that website's probably a really great starting point for people to learn more.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. But you have so much experience with it, and that's the reason why I asked you if people would be able to contact you on social media, because it's always good to talk to somebody who's actually done it, and, you're like a veteran in it now, pretty much.
That's a good term to use.
So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and you've given so much great insight, and it was just such a pleasure talking to you about all of this. So thanks so much. We will be in touch, and I'm sure there's a lot of other topics we could explore, including, just spirituality in general, right? Energy, all of it. So
definitely.
Well, thanks a lot, and to everybody who tuned in today, I really appreciate it, and stay tuned for another episode of A Billion Realities next Wednesday. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care, Ahmad.
Thank you for joining us today on A Billion Realities. Please stay tuned for next Wednesday's show at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care, everyone.